It was my 65th birthday, and I, Susan, decided it was a wonderful reason to gather everyone together. I was setting the festive table in my cozy two-room apartment, a place my late husband and I had built brick by brick with our own hands. The aroma of my signature honey gingerbread cookies filled the entire apartment, mingling with the smell of tea and pine branches I had cut from the forest. I knew my son Dan, his wife Kate, and my grandchildren Molly and Ethan loved these gingerbread cookies. For Molly, I baked them in the shape of bunnies, and for Ethan in the shape of little cars. I wanted them to feel my care, to make this evening a truly special family gathering. When they arrived, I rushed to the door, my heart full of happiness. I hugged each of them in turn, gave the grandchildren their cookies, and their eyes lit up with delight. Dan, as always, was serious. Kate, his wife, gave the table a once-over and said, "Mom, isn't this a bit much? We're on a diet, and Ethan isn't allowed sweets at all. He has an allergy." My heart sank. I remembered how he used to devour them as a child. I didn't say a word. I just quietly gathered the cookies from the table and put them back in a box. It's fine, I thought. I'll give them to Molly later when they leave. Soon after, Kate began talking about her new project. She and Dan were opening a design studio. "We need to renovate it," she said, "and we've found a wonderful antique writing desk. The one in your bedroom would be absolutely perfect." This was my father's desk. He kept his letters and manuscripts in it. I knew it was as dear to me as the memory of the man himself. "Kate," I began carefully, "that desk, it's very important to me. It's an antique, with such beautiful carvings on the legs." Dan took a sip of tea and said, without even looking at me, "Mom, what's the big deal? You don't even use it, and it will really help us get our business off the ground." His words, so indifferent and cold, felt like a harsh slap. I felt like I wasn't even being heard, that my pain, my feelings, all of it meant nothing to them. I remained silent, turning my face to the window so they wouldn't see the tears welling up in my eyes. I understood. For them, I was not a beloved mother, but simply a convenient means to an end. For the first time in years, I realized they were completely taking me for granted. I tried to talk to Dan alone when he went out onto the balcony. I desperately hoped he would understand. "Son, do you remember how Dad used to sit at this desk? He left it for me as his most precious memory. You can't just—" But he interrupted me, gently patting my shoulder. "Mom, don't worry. We'll clean it up, restore it. It'll be as good as new. It's in safe hands with us, and with you, it's just gathering dust." I felt a chill run through me, as if everything I was saying simply didn't matter, and I realized my attempts were completely futile. My silence, as I later understood, was not taken as a sign of my agreement, but as a sign of my weakness and helplessness. They thought I was already broken, that I was no longer a hurdle in their way. 2 days after my birthday, as I was sitting in the kitchen sorting through old yellowed photos from the family album, there was a loud and insistent knock at the door. I flinched. The sound was too loud and too sharp. On the doorstep stood Dan and Kate. Behind them, a tall, silent mover loomed. In their hands, like instruments of torture, were thick ropes, wide tape, and a huge roll of bubble wrap. My heart skipped a beat and plummeted somewhere into my stomach when I finally realized why they had come. "Mom, we're here for the desk," Dan said, and there wasn't a hint of doubt or a drop of sympathy in his voice. He spoke as if this were the most normal thing in the world, as if I had asked him to do it myself, as if it were a long-standing agreement between us. "Don't worry, we'll restore it. It'll be like new. We have to hurry. We have a client meeting in an hour." I was completely stunned. I had thought we would still discuss it, that he, my son, would understand how important this was to me, that he would see my pain. I had hoped we could find some compromise, but he didn't see. He looked right through me, into the depths of the room where the desk stood, as if I were invisible. Kate stood beside him, her arms crossed over her chest, and her lips were a thin, tight line. Impatience was etched on her face, and coldness shone in her eyes. She was like a statue made of ice. "Dan, but we didn't agree on this," I muttered, trying to block their path. My hands were shaking, and my voice was weak, almost inaudible. "Mom, don't start." Kate's voice was sharp, and her eyes flashed with a cold steel fire. "We have a business to run. You don't want us to go bankrupt because of some old junk, do you? We're taking it." And with that, they burst into my apartment like uninvited guests. They paid no attention to my weak protests. Dan went into the bedroom, and Kate began to inspect the living room, patting the walls with her palm, as if assessing what else they could take. She even offered to refresh my interior, proposing her design services to me. I felt as helpless as a little girl whose favorite toy is being taken away. I was like a fish thrown onto the shore gasping for air. "Dan, please don't," I begged. "This desk, it's a memory of your father. He made it himself." "Mom, let's not make a drama out of this," he said, not looking at me. "Memories are in our hearts. And we need this desk to make money. It's for your sake, for the grandchildren's sake, so they can have a future." This argument, for the grandchildren's sake, was always their trump card. They used it to silence my conscience. How could I possibly deny my grandchildren a future? How could I put some old thing above their happiness? I stood there, rooted to the spot, and watched as they wrapped the desk in bubble wrap. They worked quickly and skillfully, as if they had done this before. Kate, seeing an old wooden key holder on the wall, sneered, "Mom, what is this old junk? In our studio we have a designer one, and this is just embarrassing." She didn't even realize my husband had made that key holder himself, carving our initials into it. I remained silent. The words were stuck in my throat. I just couldn't speak them. At one point, when they tilted the desk to carry it out, a yellowed, worn notebook fell out of a small hidden drawer that my father had made himself. I knew about this drawer but had long forgotten it existed. Dan and Kate were so busy they didn't notice anything. I knelt down and discreetly hid the notebook behind my back. I felt my heart pounding harder in my chest. "Mom, don't get in the way," Dan commanded. "Go drink some tea." I went into the kitchen but didn't drink tea. I stood at the window and watched them carry out the desk. I saw it sliding down the stairs, wrapped in plastic, and it seemed that it wasn't just a desk being taken away, but a part of my very soul. I saw how Kate, as she left, gave me a look full of unexpressed indifference, and I understood that in their eyes, I was no longer a mother, but just an old woman who was getting in their way, stopping them from making money. When they left, I was alone in an empty room, with the notebook in my hands. I sat in the armchair, in the spot where the desk used to be. I opened the notebook. It was my father's diary. I read his handwriting, which I had known since childhood. Every word was filled with love and care. He wasn't just writing about his life, but about his main work, about his dream. He was a brilliant watchmaker, but at the time he lived, his ideas seemed too bold. He wrote that his invention, a mechanism for creating music boxes, was meant to be not just a beautiful object, but a genuine work of art. He wrote, "I hope my Susan will find this diary when I am gone, and I want her to know that I thought of her every minute. I don't want her to need for anything, and I believe this invention will help her. I so want her to be happy." My heart was filled with both pain and tenderness. I was holding not just a diary, but my father's testament, which had been waiting for its time for so long. I immediately called Dan, trying to share my discovery. "Dan," my voice was trembling, I found Dad's diary. There are blueprints in it. It's a real treasure." But he wasn't listening. I could hear sounds on the other end like a thud. "Mom, we don't have time for this." He was clearly annoyed. "We're unloading. The desk is heavy. Everything is falling out of our hands. I'll call you back later." He hung up. I waited. I sat there like an idiot with the phone in my hand. An hour, 2, 3. He never called back. I tried to call Kate, hoping that she, as a woman, would understand. "Kate, I found something." "Susan." Her voice was cold as ice. "We're busy right now. We have a business to run. And honestly, we don't have time for old papers. Please, don't distract us." She hung up, too. And in that moment, I felt that I was all alone. I was alone in my fight. My children, whom I had raised and given everything to, had betrayed me, taking away what was most precious. I was ready to forgive them for many things, but not this. For the first time in my life, I felt that the world was unfair. That society, family, all of it was just words when it came to money. I took the notebook in my hands. I felt the warmth emanating from it. I understood that this was not just paper, but my new hope. I understood that now I had to act alone. I had to do what my father couldn't. I had to prove to all of them that I wasn't just an old woman, that I was me, and I had my own value. I locked myself in my room and studied my father's diary all night. I wasn't just interested. It was as if I was getting to know the man who was so dear to me all over again. His notes weren't just a dry list of details and blueprints. They had a soul. My father wrote about his dreams, about how he imagined each music box would carry a piece of his love for music, for beauty, for life. He described how he would sit for hours in his workshop, how he felt each mechanism as if it were a living creature. I reread his words, and something new, something unknown, rose within my soul. I felt as if he were talking to me across the centuries. I felt his presence nearby, his gentle smile, his kind eyes. The diary contained detailed blueprints, diagrams, and even calculations that might seem archaic today, but at their core, they were brilliant. My father wrote about a mechanism that allowed the creation of music boxes capable of playing not just one melody, but a whole set. This was a real breakthrough in the world of precise mechanisms, but in his time, in the post-war era, he had neither the means nor the opportunity to patent and implement his idea. He hid the diary in the desk so that I would find it when I was ready. And, it seems, that moment had come. I understood that this notebook was not just a memory of him. It was his last gift to me, his last chance to help me, and I had no right not to use it. I spent the night without sleep, studying every line. In the morning, I got up as if a new strength had taken hold of me. I found my father's tools, which he had left me in memory of himself, in an old drawer. They were rusty and old, but for me, they were priceless. I took them in my hands, and my fingers, which had so long been busy only with cooking and cleaning, suddenly felt confident. I remembered how, as a child, I would sit for hours next to my father, watching him work. He taught me to distinguish every sound, every rustle, every click. He taught me to feel the mechanism as a living being. I understood that all this knowledge, which I had considered a childhood pastime, had not disappeared. It was just waiting for its moment, just like this diary. The next day, I put on my best dress, which I hadn't worn in many years. It was a blue velvet dress my husband had given me for an anniversary, and I had cherished it. I did my hair, put on lipstick. I was scared. An ordinary woman, a housewife, was suddenly going to this serious institution. I felt that they would see me as a crazy person, as an old woman who had lost her mind. But I was firm in my decision. I entered the office and was met by a young man who clearly didn't expect to see a woman my age. "How can I help you?" he asked, holding back a smile. I saw the condescension in his eyes, and it made me angry. "I want to patent my late father's invention," I said, and my voice, to my surprise, was as firm as steel. I took the diary from my bag and carefully, as if it were the greatest treasure, placed it on the desk. He flipped through a few pages, and his smile slowly disappeared. His eyes widened when he saw the blueprints and diagrams. He began to ask me questions, and I, without even knowing how, answered them, using terms I thought I had long forgotten. I told him how my father had imagined this mechanism, about his dreams. I spoke as if these were my own ideas. "This is brilliant," he said when I finished. "I've never seen anything like it. This is a real breakthrough. We will file for the patent in the shortest possible time. It will cost a lot of money, but I am sure it's worth it." I paid all the bills from my modest savings, which I had been saving for a rainy day. When I left the office, I felt like $1,000,000. I had documents in my hands confirming that I was the owner of a unique invention. I, Susan, a housewife, was now the rightful owner of a patent. A few days later, Dan and Kate came to pick up the remaining things for their studio. They were busy as ever, focused on their own affairs. When they saw me, they didn't even notice that I had changed. They didn't notice my dress, my hair, my gaze. "Well, Mom, have you ordered a TV yet?" Kate smirked, clutching a list in her hands. "Finally, you'll have something to entertain yourself with." But I calmly handed them the documents. "Look," I said, "this is a patent for your grandfather's invention. The documents are registered in my name." Their faces slowly changed, from contempt to bewilderment, from bewilderment to horror. They read, and I saw understanding ignite in their eyes. "But how?" Dan whispered, and his voice sounded like a screech. This is just as you wanted," I replied. "I thought I needed to do something that would generate income, because, as you said, I don't produce anything. Now I will. You sold the desk, but you had no idea that the greatest value wasn't in it, but in what was inside. I told you that the memory of Dad wasn't just empty words. They got their lesson. Their greed and indifference had turned against them. They had missed the opportunity to become co-owners of a unique patent, which, as I already knew, was worth a huge amount of money. They left my house in silence. Their eyes were full of shame and defeat. I stood in the middle of the room and watched them go. I was alone, but no longer with a feeling of loneliness, but with a sense of self-worth, with my head held high. I didn't become rich, but I got something more. I found myself. I understood that true strength is not in money or things, but in remembering yourself, your feelings, and your value. I closed the door, went back to my room, and sat in the armchair. Light snow was falling outside the window. I stroked the cover of the diary, and a smile played on my lips. I knew that before me was not the end of a life, but a new beginning. Only now did I understand. True strength is the right to be yourself.